Welcome to Ojis Oasis. This is a place where you will learn how to optimize your body, mind, and spirit in ways you have longed for a long time, perhaps your entire life. Our mission is to help you cultivate, nourish, and protect your Ojis, your immunity, and inner peace. Hi. Oh my gosh, Nidhi, welcome. Welcome to the podcast. I'm so excited we finally made it happen. I can't
Thank
tell you
you.
how excited I am.
Thank you so much. And thank you for your patience. And I'm so grateful to all of you who didn't grow up with this, but have really tapped into this wisdom. And honestly, like you, Sasha, you've dedicated like your life, it seems like,
Yeah.
to pursuing this wisdom. And that says a lot. It talks about the natural pull and magnetic calling you have for this. So yeah, I am beyond honored and blessed to be here.
You're going to make me cry. I should warn you, if you want to get to know me even a little bit, you should know that the crying is, well, it's very much in my in my chart, in my constitution, but I'm a Cancer rising. I also feel very deep connections with people, especially people that I think are doing really good things for humanity. I feel so touched, and to have it reflected back in a way, uh well, first of all, it means a lot, right? Because we do this because we know that it's a dharma of helping humanity in a time where there's a lot of suffering, and to be able to bring the knowledge using all this technology, like the platform of the podcast or social media or YouTube or any other media channels, it feels sometimes like it's a lot. So to support one another as we navigate how to bring this ancient knowledge into the modern world with all this modern technology, it feels really good to have each other. Like we're not in it alone. It's not all on one person's shoulders. Like we are a team, and we're all working really on the same mission to
Absolutely.
bring,
It's all that same. It's just, it's creating a collective movement.
yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Like any Ayurvedic practitioners or Vaidya's that come on, whether it's Jyotishas or yoga teachers and people who practice yoga. But when I have anyone in the Vedic sciences come on, I love to start with the question, how did Ayurveda find you? Although I somewhat know the answer to this, but I still feel like it's a really profound question to ask, how Ayurveda found you or how you found Ayurveda.
Yeah, yeah, and I love the way you put it. That how did I rather find you? Because it's really like that. Like you feel like you've been chosen, you've been given this responsibility, and it's choiceless, and you are just so grateful to be given that responsibility. So you're right, that's exactly how I feel. And yeah, I was born into a family where my grandfather was an Ayurvedic healer, and he was the patriarch of the family in terms of like he was the wisdom provider, he was this Yoda. And I grew up in a large joint family, so I think I learned Ayurveda like a first language. I assume the entire world lives like that. And when I say first language, it wasn't, we never said according to Ayurveda. Like that was never used, right? I
Yeah.
mean, that's just how we did things. That this is what you eat in the morning. Your body is hotter, so this can happen in your body. That's, we just spoke to each other like that. Like that's how my grandfather spoke to us, and we brought in routines and dinacharya and ways of living and understanding our bodies through the Ayurvedic lens without ever having to use the word Ayurveda. So that's how it was given to me. And also because I grew up in a joint family, Sasha, I always say that I was always curious about. I was a very sensitive child. I had a lot of feelings, and that made me a very, very curious person. So I was always wondering what makes people sick and what makes people tick. And I think then this it's luckily I had the questions and I had source for the answers because of the Vedic and the Ayurvedic upbringing that I had. And there was just, it just felt like a natural magnetic draw pull. I'm not going to say that I didn't try my hand at marketing. I did, because I didn't care less, honestly. People just told me growing up, you're so creative, you'll be great at marketing, you're so creative, you're so creative. So I was curious about the whole world and how people work and function, but I just did that for the lack of a better understanding. But then very quickly I understood what my actual calling was, and I went deep into it, and then there's no looking back. You become one with the science.
Mm. I really relate to that. I mean, same. The just the natural, the natural magnetism to it, like the sensitivity to suffering as a whole, um, which I think we were lucky that we weren't desensitized and that we weren't numb to the suffering, because I think it's easier now for kids growing up on, you know, lots of processed foods that take you out of your equilibrium, and on all this medication that can definitely inhibit a lot of normal, healthy development, and also not being in nature, being inside a lot, being on, iPhones, apps, tablets, not having the connection to uh, what's real. I think we were lucky that we grew up in a time that was probably a lot simpler and easier to connect to that sensitivity and nurture that sensitivity, um, because having that sensitivity makes you want to do something about it and makes you want to be an agent for change and helping others. And it's funny that you mentioned marketing, because I also, my first career was in advertising too. I
Oh,
was an
that's
art director for advertising
that is something
agencies, so we have that
common.
lots of common, yeah, common
Yes.
threads. um and then I really wanted to ask you about your grandfather. If you specifically, was there like always a really deep connection with your grandfather? Because my maternal grandmother was a doctor in Russia. My
Mm,
parents, I don't know if, yeah, you probably didn't know, but
mm,
I'm also a child of immigrants, but Russian immigrants.
mm.
And my grandmother has definitely, I think her energy has definitely helped me navigate to how I work with patients, how I teach Ayurveda. I definitely feel there's something in the bloodline, in the genetics, that um sometimes I'm amazed at what comes through, and it's not me, it's like it's her. So do you sometimes feel like your grandfather is working through you?
I feel that, so I connect with my grandfather almost on a daily basis, right? And I connect with his wisdom and the inspiration that he's left, not only Ayurveda, but just how to live life overall. And yes, I do believe that we carry our generational wisdom and generational trauma both, in our
Mm,
bodies and our minds both. We should shows up in our bodies, how we eat, how we live, our genetics, and it also shows up the patterns that we carry and we're exposed to. But that being said, I feel like the main, what I received from my grandfather more than anything is that how do I remain to be how do I remain being this vessel. And I think so the reminder is like, yes, you're right, sometimes you'll say things and you'll be surprised that, did I say that? I didn't even think that. Where did that come from? And I think it's more a result of downloading the truth when you are in that stage of being a hollow vessel. So I think even from my grandfather, what I've taken, because his life was dedicated to the undoing of himself. And I would say my life in a big way is dedicated to the undoing of myself. And when you practice Ayurveda, you realize the awe and wonder with which the universe is held together. And then there is no choice but to want to be part of that larger system, which is just effortless and intuitive. And in that, you end up following this path of undoing yourself. So, that I definitely have those moments where I'm like, where did that come from? But I think it is a result of just the desire to remain being this, hollow. And I would say the person who's embodied that the most in my life, that I have seen, that I think of every day, is my grandfather.
mm. And when you say the undoing of yourself, do you mean removing the ego out of the way?
And yeah, and like, I would say that maybe that's what I may have heard as a child, the ego. But as I have lived my own life and gone through my own journey, the undoing of myself is more on the fact that the trigger patterns that show up, the sanskaras as they
Mm,
call it,
mm,
and they kind of block your vision, because every time you have an extreme sensational reality to something that's happening, it blocks truth, right?
mm,
Because now it's like a little child who's getting a prick, and is getting injected, and that feels so big for him that he's actually lost proportion of really how big it is, right? So we lose sense of proportion for what events are. We block clarity. We bias ourselves because things feel difficult or easy, or you crave something, or you're averse to something. So when I say undoing is of myself, is to stay in that state, to try and stay in a state where I'm at least consciously aware of my trigger patterns, and then to go through a lifetime journey where it's undoing, and at the same time, uh, constantly connecting with the world around me and its patterns, so that truth becomes known to you. And I think in that process, as we do that, there is no choice. And I'm not saying I'm even close to it there anywhere, but the dissolution of the ego is a natural result when you just
Right.
realize that it's the same pattern over and over again and again, and how transient we are. And yet there are moments where we feel so big in our lives, and then there are moments where we feel so important to ourselves. um, but to go on this journey means to really experience those moments of dissolution, of letting things come through us, and to keep this desire to to see truth and find clarity.
You sound like you just came back from a meditation retreat.
Which I know that you do.
How did you like the retreat that you went on? If you wanted to share anything about that. I know it's fresh. Sometimes it takes time to integrate what you just experienced, but since it's fresh, I'm wondering if maybe you feel particularly inspired to share what you experienced.
I do feel that a lot of these experiences are actually kind of personal. And I'll tell you why, right?
Yeah.
Because the
Sure,
minute
sure.
you talk about an experience that, oh, this happened to me, there becomes such a me attached to it. There becomes like
Yes,
a little
yes.
bit of a, without meaning to, but a little bit of propagandist mentality about it. And then there's the
Mm,
me becomes important, or I had this experience becomes important. The only thing I can say is that I have meditated for many, many years, because honestly, the first time I was thrown into it, my dad sent me for a 10-day silent Vipassana retreat when I was 15. And since then, I've had some sort of experience with meditation, and I've always been curious as well. But right now, what I do is Dr. Joe Dispenza's work, which is deeply inspired. Basically, it is the Vedic work of moving energy, undoing your own trigger patterns, and dissolving the self, and at the same time to use this as well, depending on the station you are in, to produce in the world, right? So it's not just the undoing of yourself. How do I undo within and still be able to do outside, which is the
mm.
challenge, the doing and the being. And I have not found anybody else teach it like that. Nobody, honestly, even though he's an American man. He's not does not have that lineage, and he's looked at it just in the most scientific manner. There is enough research. I did take my 16-year-old daughter with me, which made the experience even more real. I've been practicing his work for the last 5 years, and I feel truly blessed. I feel truly blessed. It's like you go, and each time you get an upgrade. You actually get a frequential up, your frequency changes every time you go there. And then of course you come back in this whole 3D world, and you're dumped with 3D reality. And then the challenges, or the ask is, how do I keep that sustained? How do I keep that state sustained? So it's a lot of work. You got to walk through the fire. And right now, yes, I'm fresh, so I am it's big in my heart, and I've had heart openings. But the challenges, and of course the desire, is to keep the work up, and only then can we talk about it, because sometimes we glorify a 7-day experience, and honestly it means nothing unless there's an upkeep. Like, I went first 5 years ago, and Sasha, I really kept up my practice very well for the first 3.5, 4 years. And then the meditations became a little shorter, then something else took importance, and I continued to meditate, but I knew that my intensity had changed. And as a result, the frequency, like my frequency changed. And as a
Mm.
result, the results of the outcomes of my life changed, my state of mind changed. So it's like, can you keep up the practice?
I hear you on that. I mean, every time I've come back from India, from a panchakarma, for example, and I'm about to go back to India again, and keeping the dinacharya is something especially when you're traveling or when you have a lot of things that do kind of create variability and lots of vata in your life. Lots of first of all, mobility, the pace of life here is a lot different, right? Anywhere you go in any phase of your life, you're going to want to match the pace with where you are. Especially, I know you're in New York City. I used to live there. But to source inspiration and to and to gain that perspective and refresh that perspective, traveling, going to retreats, it keeps us inspired. It keeps us on our toes, but then it also challenges us to keep our routines and to keep doing certain things that, whether it's a meditation practice or, you know, simply taking a few deep breaths before we eat or before we go to bed, things like this, like these small little things. And I really understand what you're saying about how slowly but surely it begins to unravel the further away you get from a retreat, like, or from a really profound, awakening experience, because we get lost back in, like you called it, the 3D, and I always call it the Maya, like the illusion of all
Yes,
of this.
basically.
Hmm.
Basically. And yet I'll tell you, Sasha, I feel like this is just, that is the part of life, and that is the beauty of life, to play between Maya and, just the source. And it's fine. I personally feel, even for people, I travel quite a bit, and yes, I live in New York City as well. Luckily I stay in a building where the windows are very soundproof,
Oh,
so
that's good.
once in a while there'll be a window open and I'm like, oh, I hear the sound. So I have that. Plus, I don't socialize at all,
Good.
especially
I'm
Monday to
just kidding.
Friday. No, no, really, really, really. And I don't know if it's a good or a bad thing, but I don't socialize at all. And what that does for me, because I don't socialize at all, is it keeps it very like, it keeps a lot of equilibrium going Monday to Friday. Preserve my energies. I could be living in Timbuktu and I would have the same experience what I have in New York City. And yet there's freshness of the city, and my girls are young and they like the vibe of the city, and that's fine. But we live very non-New York life, which I
Mm,
enjoy, and I also know then it's possible for people to do that. And when I work with people, Sasha, I always tell them to make variations of their rituals, which means that this is my full on a full on day. This is what I do. So maybe 75 minutes of meditation, 45 minutes of like my exercise, asana, whatever it is. Plus, these are the charyas that I follow. When it's a busy day, you make another variation. So 20 minutes of this and maybe a 45-minute meditation. When it's a very busy day, then you make another variation. When I'm traveling, you make another variation. When you go to ground zero, so I personally run a program, a 21-day radical transformation program. And in that, one of the phases is a mastery. And in the mastery, people get to make their own playbook. And in the playbook, they have variations for their routines. And we even say that if you've gone to zero, let's say you had a period, something happened, right? You went to zero, then how do you start again? So I think all of this is fair, and I think just having these variations, right? Most of the time people are like, oh, because I'm on vacation, I'm not going to do anything. I say make a 7-minute routine. We'll do one thing. You just do one thing. You say, I'm just going to do my tongue cleaning. I'm going to do my anulom vilom for 3 minutes. I'm going to, just maybe just do one Surya Namaskar, and that's it. But
mm,
you create versions, and when you create versions, you stay in the game, and that's all you need to do is stay in the game.
mm. I know that you also specialize in women's health. So I have to ask you about that because I'm also specializing in women's health. And I love seeing more and more Ayurvedic practitioners give that attention to women, specifically because we are, perhaps it's a generalization, but I do think it's scientifically proven that our hormones are more sensitive because there's, just such a greater fluctuation for us on a purely biological level, let alone, of course, spiritually, we are designed to be portals of life, right, and to grow life, and that gives us a very intimate relationship with nature. But and the we need to feel extreme empathy in order to be able to, nurture and take care of a baby, for example. That's a very vulnerable place, for women and children. So I love that you specialize in women's health. And I was wondering, well, a really good question would be, why did you choose women's health? Because, there's when when I first started the Ayurvedic doctor program, they asked us, do you want to go into the psychology? Do you want to go into, pediatrics, or, which specialty do you want to do? And I was almost the only one in my whole group, my whole batch, that chose women's health specifically, which I was surprised about. Um, but I was happy to see that that's what you chose, and I was wondering what led you to gravitating to wanting to support women specifically.
Yeah, yeah. And I think for me, I did other things as well, but my heart naturally, like I've done a lot of pediatrics, and it's more women's wellness. And I'll tell you why, Sasha, right? Because I think my work is a combination of Ayurveda, Vedic sciences, holistic psychology, and quantum physics. It's
Mm,
all of this.
mm,
Okay, that's basically, it's an integration of all of this. um, and I like Ayurveda because it does a great job of explaining the concepts, but you can use it for any of these areas. I chose women's wellness more than health. And I'll tell you, firstly, I've had personal stories where I've seen my aunts suffer physically, emotionally, women having to, women often say shut up to themselves to show up for something outside of them. We're so designed to be in tune with everybody else's needs. And I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but sometimes that happens at the cost of saying shut up to ourselves, because you wake up in the morning showing up for your children, your parents, your partner, whether food is on the table, trash is out. We just feel we are just, because a woman wakes up in the middle of the night to nurse, we are just so cued in to the needs of our environment. We're just built like that. And in today's day and age, we have less support. We don't live in communities. And when we go through this lifetime journey of saying shut up to show up, you shut up to yourself to show up, and then one fine day it's like something in your body or your mind gives up. You don't feel good about yourself anymore. 30s, 40s, 50s, and chances are the body is in pain as well, which could be a reflection of that, or for years of just not neglect, or just a reflection of your mind state. And when that's, so I say, we carry debris from a lifetime. And then we carry debris from a lifetime, and then usually what we end up doing is we say, hey, now let me find an expert, right? Because women are like, I can't show up for my kids, I need to go and get, most of the times it's sad, but women will come to me and say, oh, because I need to show up for my life, that's why I want to do this. It's not even for themselves.
mm,
And then when you go to an expert, and this experts a dime a dozen, and the experts will always experts today, Sasha, the way it's created, you create a dependence on the expert knows more than you feel
mm,
very safe in the short term, and then over a period of time you start losing confidence on yourself, because if you're going to tell yourself every day somebody knows more than me, what does that do to me? So, and not only are you unhappy, maybe temporarily feeling better in your body, but you're unhappy, you've lost confidence, you go back into your life, maybe feeling physically better, emotionally more worn out. So, my work is basically focused on getting women to, like I said, undo themselves, the physical and mental um, traumas, ailments, imbalances that they carry. I work with women to just really understand who they are, start this journey of undoing, and find beauty in the rhythms and harmony of the universe and our body. We are such rhythmic beings. Like, sorry, but men don't get to enjoy that. Uh, and so I really, my main work is to just come back to that, and to not even focus on the small things. In fact, just, Sasha, before you, today 10 o'clock, I have this one aftercare program for my radical transformation program, 21 day, practicing the code. And one of the women in the program tells me that, listen, I've done everything, gone for panchkarma, done medication, but I've always had high ESR on my blood reports, and it's always been the case.
mm,
And she said, I didn't even do anything. I just did this 21-day program, and I started living with the codes. That's what I call, I have 3 codes. And she's like, it's never ever happened before that my numbers have come down. Like, it's like they're within range now. And what I told her is that that's all we need to do. Sometimes we really target, we break down our bodies and we try to fix one thing. And I'm not saying that is needed sometimes, but most of the times, the larger idea of balance is so missing, that we may target small areas, but we are still missing larger balance. And sometimes that's all that it takes, and it's much easier. And then you find everything else falling into place. So I focus on that type of wellness more than anything else. Yes, I've done work with the hormones. Yes, I love postpartum and fertility and all of those things. But my heart lies in addressing this whole responsibility or opportunity that, Sasha, our mothers didn't have, our grandmothers didn't have this opportunity to actually say, hey, this I've carried this generational trauma in my mind, in my body, ways of eating, value systems, conditionings, beliefs, and experiences. Not only that, right? We are a sum of what we carry from our generational traumas, mental, physical, and wisdom, but we're also a sum of what's happening in the world around us, what is available to us in terms of food and in terms of you know, input for our mind. So we are carrying all of that. And now we are here, a full container of all of this, right? Wisdom, opportunity, plus this baggage. Am I going to be the woman in my family who's going to shed this baggage? Who's when is destiny going to change from this point? Is the history of my family going to change because I decided to do something about it? Because never before in the history of mankind have women had this opportunity to stop in their tracks and do something about it. So honestly, my entire mission is led with that, because when a woman heals, the family heals. The family heals, the community heals. The community heals, the world heals. I don't think much more needs to be done than this if we were to do this systematically. So that is my mission, Sasha, is to reach 1 million women who can start this journey of really working on all this baggage.
You're on your way. You're going to do it.
Yeah. I mean, when you realize that so much of this, right, Ayurveda really teaches you that so much of this is already in place, the patterns and of the universe, and so much of this is already, there's very little that we're doing. And there's no choice. It's just a humbling experience, to be honest with you. It's not an active humility you cultivate. It's just a humbling experience to realize the minusculity of human life and possibility. So I completely hear you.
You're just a really good role model for what we're doing here, and why we're doing it. So I think that role model, yeah, that's probably not to put you in a box and
I know, I know,
say
I know.
that, because I know that comes with a lot of pressure and whatever to like,
No,
but
Sasha, I'll tell you honestly, and I think because my this side, I'm a super goofy person, right? And I think it's the way that my consciousness just balances itself, because I'm a deep thinker, and yes, I am preoccupied by this. And the more I do this, the more I realize that we are nothing. So we're,
so
so
it's all good.
like so I think the lighter you become on this, like if you become heavy on this path
Yes.
path
Yeah.
and rigid and idealistic, it's not really even a path, right? So with my daughters, they're like, mommy, you are, like my daughter takes behind the scenes for me. So she's like, mom, do people know that you're just sitting and dancing like that, that this is how you're talking? Like I don't, I'll go into an accent, I'll say things involuntarily, I'll make the silliest jokes. And that's who, like, and I love doing that, because I think it just, like, we're all, if you cannot play, if you cannot be a child at any point, then I think you've already lost the plot.
I couldn't agree more. I laugh all the time. And it's funny, I don't think people are used to seeing their Vaidyas, like, I'm sorry, their medical doctors in such a way that's like as relaxed and as flexible with, and it's interesting, like any guru will always say, don't call me your guru. I'm not a guru, right? And that's how you know they're a real guru,
Yeah,
by the
yeah,
way, is when,
yeah,
so yeah, and that's why I also wanted to quickly caveat the comment about wishing you were my sister, because it's like, well, you all kind of are. I mean, we're all kind of family anyway at the end of the day, like,
yeah.
especially like the more people you find that are like-minded and are doing similar things as you. And I am the goofiest. I mean, yeah, I goofy is a funny way of I sense of humor is how I would put it. I laugh all the time. I'm the loudest laugher in the movie theater, right? Like I will laugh until I cry. I think laughing is medicine. I mean, it is. It
Laughing and
is.
crying both, to
It's
be honest with
profound.
you. Yeah.
Yes.
Laughing and crying are both extremely useful, simple tools. And you're so right about this. I found such deep sisterhood in the work that we do. Just all the women like yourself that, talk to, who are in the same mission and so supportive of each other. And I'll tell you, part of the reason why I don't socialize much is, Sasha, because I don't have the need to. Because every conversation, like, unfortunately, I see most people, oh, they're going to work and then they're recovering from work, right? For me, my work is my recovery. My work is where my heart is its fullest. I don't have the need to have recovery, to be honest. Like, this is where I do all of it. This is my playground, this is my research ground, this is everything for me, this is home. So I just, every conversation, like earlier, like I said, I had this little workshop for my practicing the code cooking workshop. It's just so fun. Like, everything is where I become one. This is where I become truly one with myself, is my work. So, and it offers a great sisterhood.
Agreed, agreed, and agreed. It's like every sentence there's like a check, like an invisible check mark. I have that same, I'm like that with this work too, and I think that's how you know it's probably your soul's work and your dharma. I've heard this thing where when you feel like your ojas is actually enhanced by your work, you know you're very much in alignment with what you're supposed to be doing.
Absolutely. And the other thing that I say, Sasha, and I work with my clients on this also in my radical transformation program, where I'm like, when you're doing and being at the same time, when you've lost sense of time and space, for if you find yourself in a moment where you forget your name, you're not worrying about tomorrow, yesterday, you're so in the present moment, right? When you're doing and still being, it means you're so fully in the present moment. Like you forget it's day, night, lunch, dinner, everything is gone. You know you are in your dharma.
Hmm.
That is the moment of your dharma. So I even tell my daughters, I said, girls, remember the moments when you've lost sense of time and space. And I remember, Sasha, when I was in sixth grade and they talked about the four ashrams in like in some history class, just even in passing. But I remember so vividly that I was just like, wow, what a great way to look at life. I know I lost sense of time and space in that moment as a sixth grader. And every time if I look back, everywhere I lost sense of time and space in my life has all come together and become the work that I do today. So I tell people, you start noticing those moments and connect the dots on them and then find who you are and your
Hmm.
purpose.
Hmm. I have really early similar childhood memories, and I thought it was strange that other people around me didn't have those same types of insights or realizations. And I still to this day am kind of, I think it's I'm always surprised that people don't have the similar thoughts or similar moments of seeing certain things.
Mm.
But then, you know, deeper into the Vedas you go, you understand there's different souls that are here for different reasons. We're all here to awaken, but everyone's at a different stage and has different karmic debts and different things that they have to do first. And but everyone's going to the same place. So
Mm.
that makes me feel a bit less, you know, not strange. I wouldn't say strange. I don't think it's a strange thing to have these insights. I think it's a blessing,
Mhm.
but it's always really heartwarming when I hear, and it's rare. I should say it's rare, but when I hear fellow you know, I don't know if I should call it colleagues or,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah, yeah. I mean, fellow sisters, fellow people
fellow
in this world.
sisters.
Yeah, yeah.
But when I hear that you have been going through the world with similar moments of consciousness, I feel like, okay, it's not just me. Okay, thank God.
And
Thank
and
God.
hopefully it's not just hopefully, the more people that do this, the more in alignment we'd all be living.
Mm.
And when you're living in alignment, there's no desire to bring anybody down. There's no desire to do anything that causes disruption in the energies of the world, because you're just aligned. And so of course we hope that many others are on that same path, and we hope that in the work that we do somehow we can become catalysts for others to be on that path.
You mentioned the word rhythmic, which stood out. Like I bookmarked it in my head when you said we're very rhythmic beings or creatures. And there was a question I wanted to ask. I was thinking about it for a long time. Actually, me personally, as a student of the Vedas, but also probably in my own life. I'm 35. I don't have kids. I want to one day, but I'm not at that level. I still have to finish school, and I'm also very much at the feet of the unfoldment of life, and I'm more of a servant of the Vedas, so the Vedas will sort of show me what I'm supposed to do. That's how I kind of approach life at this point. But I was wondering about women, if you work with women who are either opting to conceive later in life or circumstantially conceiving later in life, and how you work with them, because modern fertility now, there's a lot of options that we didn't have thousands of years ago, right? When the Vedas were written, we didn't have egg freezing, for example. We didn't have IVF. I don't know if we had surrogates back then, or like egg donors or sperm donors. I don't know. I don't think we had that. Probably not. But what would your view be on that? Do you work with women that do things like this, or do you encourage those modalities, or is it more like, I know the ancient texts are always saying, you know, do a panchakarma and clean your vessel and make sure your eggs are healthy. But I know that every woman's journey is so unique, and
Yeah,
it's hard
yeah.
to I guess my question is, how do we integrate like the modern
Yeah, yeah,
fertility, all the
yeah,
things that are available with Ayurveda, and
yeah.
what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah. So I'll tell you, I mean, in the Vedic literature mythology, in the Mahabharata, there's been a story of artificial insemination, but I think that was more energetic. Kunti had Karan, and this is from the Mahabharata. But leaving that aside, right? Look, Ayurvedic texts will tell you that 36 is on the other side of fertility, and I like to view, and I don't think that is, while that is ideal, I'm not saying that we can't work around it, but I want to first talk about the ideal picture and why it is so, right? So as women, like, adolescence is like a full oil lamp, flame and fuel, both fire and fuel, and that's a very ripe situation. It's spring in nature. There's water there's rain, and there is the sun, and these are the two elements, right? We need the fuel. Eggs are always laid in fluid places. As we go through our time, right, 20s and 30s, our bodies, the fuel starts to deplete. Before the flame, it's the fuel. And then the fuel, you kind of use up your fuel, you become drier. People say that in 30s, after the other side of 36, people start to dry out a little bit, 35.
Hmm.
And that's not true for everybody. If you've preserved your flame, if your fuel well, fertility is about preserving your fuel. And if you preserve your fuel well, you can go a little longer. My sister conceived last year, delivered a couple of years ago, uh, on the other side of her 40th birthday, completely normal. Nobody could call it high risk, vaginal birth, all good, you know. Uh, and I know, of course, she lived Ayurvedically her whole life, and that helped a lot. And so that was fine, right? So you can, but the body has its natural clock, and it likes to deplete by then. So I would say you preserve your fuel. If you have the option, the luxury, conceive earlier. If you have the luxury, but not everybody does. Now, when it talks about artificial methods that are available today, modern methods, IVF, etc., etc., I say that, look, the urge to become a mother is such a strong urge, and if that is the strongest urge that you have,
Hmm.
and you need to do what you need to do for it. Like, I'll have somebody 39, 38, 37 call me and say, should I freeze my eggs? And I'll say, just freeze them. You can take a call later. But if this is available to you, you don't want to find yourself at 41 saying, oh my God, now I can't do anything about it. Because I also know that sometimes, like, when you've not been able to meet the urge, look, nesting hormones will settle. Between 30 and 40, you have the strongest nesting hormones. You want to have that baby. A lot of people on the other side of 43, 44, 45, they naturally lose that urge because your body changes. But let's say that doesn't happen. I mean, you want to have the option. Yes, your body gets injected with a ton of hormone, so you want to know that. You want to get a panchkarma after. You want to figure it out. I like to meet people personally, Sasha, where they're at. If
Hmm.
somebody is 42 says they wants to conceive, I'm not going to say no. Somebody is 42 says, I'm going for an IVF, how can you help me? I'm not going to say no. You do the best that you can do, but it's useful to know that the journey is about preserving your fuel and keeping your fire.
Hmm.
It's easier to keep your fire in today's day and age. It's harder to keep your fuel because of the solar lifestyles that we have. Everything is heating and drying, caffeine, staying up, anger, chronic stress, travel, everything dries you up. So how are you going to bring in that lunar?
When you say fuel, are you referring to Agni or are you referring to Ojas?
You can say ojas in a way, but not even the soft tissues in your body,
Hmm.
right? Even the mucosal lining, your majjadhatu, your the coating, the myelin soft sheet. Listen, when you dry, you dry systemically. Some things will dry faster than others, but we dry systemically. By the time we're in a post menopause, vaginal dryness on the skin, dryness on the hair. You see women that they look dry, but the drying starts at 6:36,
Hmm.
right? So making sure that your abhyanga, good fats, enough sleep, not overdoing caffeine, stress regulation, like what I call lunar activities. Make sure that you spend time in the lunar every single day where you have spent time recovering from your life.
Hmm. Lunar meaning go to bed by 10 o'clock.
Not
No.
necessarily. So that's the lunar time of the day, but lunar also just means getting a massage. Any time where you're not being solo, you're not producing, you're not out there getting stuff done, you're taking time to just be. It could be just laying down at 4 o'clock with legs up against the wall and you're being lunar. It could just be that I'm taking a moment in the middle of my afternoon, I have water sounds on, and I'm going to come back to my breath. Anytime you could put your body in parasympathetic, in a rest and repair mode, You don't have to wait till night to rest and repair. You can find those moments of rest and repair throughout the day, because the lifestyles we live with, electricity has changed our world. We do more things than we were meant to do. So because we're living in that era where we are not lighting oil lanterns, and there's only so much you could do with those oil lanterns, uh, we're doing a lot more than we're meant to do as bodies. We're drying, we're using our fuel, we're using our gas up. So how are you going to replenish it moment by moment, hour by hour, through abhyanga, through food, through good fat, through good conversation, through stress management, all of that? Those are lunar activities.
Mm-hmm. Gosh, and I think to so many of my female friends and women throughout my life that I've met who they're exhausted, right? They're totally burned out. And to get through their productive days, they just chug a bunch of coffee in the morning and they go to like a really intense exercise class, right? And then they just keep going and keep going and keep going. And then at night they watch TV. And there's no real moment of stillness that's truly nourishing because it's them trying to force themselves through the nonstop, you know, wear and tear, like the daily grind. And I know that inevitably also will impact a woman's hormones, right? If she's not nourishing her lunar qualities, like you said, to use your.
Absolutely, because eggs are always laid in fluid places, and women have that their bodies are a little bit cooler than men's bodies. You're more like literally lunar. So you'd say lunar goddess. You'll never say a lunar god. Like it's more of a lunar goddess, right? The sperm will burn out in a man's body, and that's why it's stored in a testicle outside of his body, where the temperature is much cooler. But the same sperm will swim in a female's body, because it's the fluids that kind of protect. Even we are 98.7 degrees, to be honest with you, but we have so much more fluid in our body that the sperm can safely make it to the egg.
Hmm. I wanted to ask you about the I always get this question too, and I'm always struggling to answer it for people that want to know about the menstrual cycle, specifically the connection between women's cycle and the moon, the cycles of the moon. And I know that in Ayurveda we say ideally a woman will bleed with the new moon and she will ovulate with the full moon. Um, why do you think why do you think it is, or how would you articulate that relationship between women and the cycles of the moon? Is it only because like is I feel like there must be a deeper reason why we flow, literally flow, literally our menstrual flow, but our cycles match the cycles of
Yeah,
the moon
yeah, yeah,
specifically.
yeah, yeah. Okay, and so first, Sasha, let me ask you, what does the moon do to the tides in the ocean?
Raises the tides.
It has a gravitational pull.
Hmm.
It has a gravitational pull for every fluid in the body,
Right,
by the way, right? So the larger the moon, the more it's churning
right,
life forces.
right.
And what happens is that we have very subtle fluids in our body, subtle hormones in our body, and they all respond to the moon. And in that time of great fertility, in that time where the moon is out and you're very, very fertile, what is the meaning? When you look at fertile land, you may never have studied farming, you may never be a botanist, but you look at fertile land, if it's dry, it's not fertile. So when the moon is out there, your body is like ripe and ready and fertile to kind of do this. And you know that you're in alignment at that point. So that's the reason why the moon, which plays with the most subtle fluids in your body, subtle hormones in your body, um, it has that direct relationship.
Hmm. And then it also impacts the mind, right? Because the moon in the Vedic, for example, in astrology, when we look at a person's chart, we say, oh, wherever the moon is, the house, the sign. I mean, that says us so much about the way that that person thinks, experiences emotions. Emotions correlates to the water element. We're 70% water. The planet is about the same amount of water that we have inside of ourselves. So I.
It's all the same outside
Mhm,
and inside. It's the same.
mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's really important for people to see the connection. Like when we say rhythmic, the more we can explain what that means and like use like literally guiding people through, see, this is how it is inside of you, right? And then look at the oceans, look at what's happening in the sky, look at what's happening to the fruits, and when is it a good time to plant the seeds, when is it a good time to harvest the seeds.
It's as above, so below.
Hmm.
As is the universe, such is the human body, and vice versa. So basically, that is the order of the planet, and that's the biggest principle of the Vedas. Also, yatha brahmande tatha pinde, yatha pinde tatha brahmande. As again, as is the cosmos, such is the microcosm, macro and micro. I actually like that is the so when I talk about patterns and I talk about rhythms, I talk that is the biggest learning I've received from the Vedas. It is the patterns of matter which create the energy. If it was inanimate, there would be no patterns. But when you see patterns, you know there is energy. And when you see patterns that are fluctuating, you know there's energy, there's imbalanced energy. So how do you stay with the rhythm? How do you stay in rhythm? How you connect with others' rhythms? Really it is a big sign into balance.
Let me ask you another question following up to the women that are conceiving later in life. So, if a woman is able to preserve that fuel, to use your words, um, I know that there's different types of aging, right? Like there's biological, there's linear time, and then there's also like how you are taking care of yourself, right? There's your age that you've been on the earth, and then there's the actual
Yeah,
how old is your
yeah.
body, and like
Depreciation.
wonderful. I guess a good thing, or a good place to probably conclude are or would be uh my question, my like sign off question would be, what are your non-negotiables for your life when you feel, like your stress, your external stressors are perhaps a bit higher than normal, or like you have to only do the most basic essential things. What are those basic essential things that are absolutely you cannot go without on your day to day, no matter if you're traveling, if your schedule is hectic, like, shit hits the fan. What are your absolute, I must do these things. There's no way I can sacrifice
Yeah.
those things.
So complete shit hits the fan, like
Yes.
complete. I'll tell you the two things that I end up doing is like, let's say this is like, oh, I have no time to meditate, no time to exercise. Like, let's say it's one of those periods or days, right? Which I'm going to say is rare. I will get some form of that, but let's just say I will still do my abhyanga, and it could be really light. It could be a 5 minute abhyanga, but I use oil on my body. But the one thing that really supports me through everything is I keep coming back, and I do this several times. And I say several, I mean hundreds of times in the day, and just subconscious. It's become a habit now, where I keep connecting with my breath
Mm.
and exhales. Even like while I've talked to you, Sasha, I must have done it 50 times in our own conversation, right? Where like I will connect with my breath. I will connect with the sensation, like where my feet are falling. So there is this active, constant grounding, and I end up doing it more in the busiest days. So I'll be in the shower. I know it's a really busy day, and I really like feel the water on my skin. I really like stay with it, you know. So I keep connecting, so that helps allows you to keep coming back in the present moment. And even if you can get a second of parasympathetic rest and repair in the busiest days where you're doing, sometimes that's enough.
Hmm. I love the legs up the wall. Such a simple one.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
easy.
And if you don't even get time for that, right, like I'm talking about absolutely those
Hmm.
days, I'd say just constant connection with the body, like just come back to the breath, come back to the body. And that is my biggest battlefield tool. When I'm on the battlefield, that is my biggest tool. I find myself in a situation, that's my biggest tool. And I also connect with my heart center when things are actually progressively, like, let's say, triggering. So that breath, just coming back, our body has everything we need.
Any favorite herbs currently that you're taking? Or any Brahmi,
I believe
ashwagandha,
it or not,
shiitake?
Sasha, I'm not an herb taker. I
No.
actually don't believe in taking a lot of herbs
Hmm.
because I do feel that at some point we actually don't. When you live a very, we can live holistically and you don't need a lot of herbs. So I don't think there's any herb that I take regularly. Nothing,
Hmm.
zero.
Hmm.
I will take Chavanprash in the
Hmm.
winters, and I'll eat food seasonally. I'll put it depends on what I put in my milk. I have hot milk every day, and that might change season to season. But there's nothing that I do all year round. Zero.
Hot milk before bed, like an hour before bed
No, that's
in the
actually my
morning.
breakfast. I do blanched almonds, like soaked and peeled almonds, and I do hot milk. And that
I wanted to ask you about the inner climate method. Is that your 21-day practice that you teach?
So, Sasha, what the inner climate method, it is a method that I use to kind of come back to this equilibrium in the body and the mind, and it is a proprietary method. But it's, like you've studied the shastras, you've studied Ayurveda, and they talk about even when kapha is imbalanced, this is what it looks like. When pitta is imbalanced, this is what it looks like. When vata is imbalanced, this is what it looks like. And ideally, you want to have all three in balance. But there is nowhere that it says what does that look like. What does it look like when all three are balanced? What is that scenario? What am I working towards? So we are constantly working towards prevention of aggravation, but we don't know what we are working towards. What is that homeostasis? And that place is the inner climate, and that inner climate is warm and moist. So, and I'm actually, because your listeners are interested in Ayurveda, I'm actually going to go through this, right? And I don't know how. I suspect um, I don't know why the text is articulated that way, and but it's something that I've like I said, I channeled, or it was channeled through me. And I'll tell you what. So when kapha, which is cold and humid, you go to balance kapha, you can't go too hot. You're going to aggravate pitta. You can't go too dry because you'll aggravate vata.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So you stop at warm and moist. Pitta is hot and humid. You balance pitta. You can't go too cold. You'll aggravate kapha. You can't go too dry. You'll aggravate vata. You stop at warm and moist. It's a place where there is no. Vata is extremely dry and cool. You try to balance vata, you can't go too humid, you'll aggravate kapha, but you stop at warm and moist. The opposite of cool and dry is warm and moist. As human beings, our breath is warm and moist. Our urine is warm and moist. Our blood is warm and moist. The mother's milk is warm and moist. Our reproductive fluids are warm and moist. Everywhere outside in life, best best flora and fauna,
Right.
also the microbiome, places that are warm and moist, right? We like people that are warm and moist. The balance of the sun, the dehydrating qualities, heating and dehydrating qualities of the sun get balanced by the lunar, cooler, more moist aspects of the moon. It makes our planet warm and moist. Climate is what kept life thriving, going, and existing on our planet. Climate is what will keep our body and the microbiome and its life thriving, thus our life thriving. The inner climate method is a systematic way of bringing you back to that ideal inner climate, so where you don't have to fight every disease independently. What I've found, that's what I said in my 21-day program, when once you start restoring your inner climate, things that you have targeted but have not improved, like I talked about this girl's ESR, somebody's high blood pressure, another person who had migraines and had done everything for it. Because the inner climate restores, everything, life thrives. I mean, we didn't have to try to get life on planet Earth. Out of the entire universe, Milky Way, at least the access that we have to the universe, the only planet we found life on was this place, because it is warm and moist. So the inner climate of the human body is also warm and moist. We like warm people. Nobody ever teaches us what warm people are. We just know it feels right. Being inside the covers is warm and moist. The mother's hug is warm and moist. So it is, I teach people how to actively live this warm and moist lifestyle, how to bring it in their foods, how to bring it in their exercise, how to bring it in their relationships, in love, in every single aspect of your life. You can bring in the warm and moist.
I love that. Well, you certainly feel that way. Yeah.
Thank you. And it's been so lovely to connect with you. And we'll continue the sisterhood. Thank you, Sasha.
Thank you so much.
Take care.
Thank you for listening to Ojis Oasis with Sasha Bershadsky. To learn more about Ayurvedic healing, please visit ojisoasis.com. We'll see you next time, and until then, have your smile.